Cryptic Radio. I never imagined that a random listing for an old, charming house could end up turning my life into an endless nightmare. After a messy breakup and feeling completely lost, I figured a fresh start might be just what I needed. So when I came across a quaint Victorian house on Maple Drive, I thought, why not? It had the character, history, and a strange allure that I couldn't resist. But from the moment I crossed its creaking threshold, I realized that some secrets are best left buried. The house greeted me with a chill that wasn't just from the autumn air seeping through broken windows. Every floorboard creaked under my steps as if whispering long-forgotten confessions. In the dim light of the setting sun, the faded wallpaper and dust-covered portraits seemed to watch me with eyes full of sorrow and regret. I tried to brush off the feeling of being observed as mere nerves, yet deep down, I couldn't shake the sense that I wasn't alone. That first night was the worst. Lying in bed, I was startled by soft murmurs drifting through the hallway, almost as if someone was calling my name. "Emily, remember?" The voice sighed repeatedly, gentle yet laden with despair. I sat bolt upright, heart pounding, and strained my ears in the oppressive silence that followed. I convinced myself it was just the wind or the house settling into its old bones. But the chill in my spine told another story. The following days were marked by bizarre encounters. Every reflective surface, the antique mirror in the hallway, the tarnished spoon in the kitchen, even the dark window glass, revealed fleeting images of a pale, anguished woman whose eyes seemed too familiar. Each time I caught a glimpse, the figure vanished as quickly as a shadow at dusk. Odd trinkets began to appear too. A rusted locket engraved with the word "remember", an old photograph of a woman whose smile bore a haunting resemblance to my own, and even a cracked music box that played a melancholic tune when I least expected it. Unable to dismiss these unsettling signs, I began exploring the house's space. In the attic, buried under a pile of moth-eaten quilts and dusty relics, I found a leather-bound diary. The delicate handwriting inside told the story of a woman named Emily, who once lived in this very house. Her words danced between hope and terror as she recounted memories of a life filled with love, loss, and a creeping darkness that grew with each passing night. One entry, scrawled in haste and despair, read, "I fear the darkness because it reveals the truth I cannot escape. In its shadows I see what I once was and what I must never become again." The words struck me like a jolt. I couldn't help but wonder if this Emily was more than just a former resident. Was it possible that her story was intertwined with my own? Night after night, the whispers intensified. I began hearing them even during the day. Echoes of a voice that seemed to come from nowhere, always pleading, always lamenting. In my dreams, I found myself wandering endless corridors lit by the flickering light of a dying candle. I'd see a ghostly figure in the distance, its eyes brimming with sorrow and longing, reaching out as if begging me to remember something vital. I started noticing small details that didn't add up. The way my reflection lingered in the mirror, the inexplicable cold spots in rooms that should have been warm, and the haunting feeling that every creak in the floor was a secret trying to be told. One particularly stormy night, when thunder rattled the windows and lightning illuminated the peeling walls, I decided to confront the source of these disturbances. Clutching the diary for comfort, I ventured into the basement, a dank, shadowy labyrinth filled with relics of a bygone era. There, Amidst cobwebs and forgotten furniture, I discovered a hidden door behind a stack of old crates. With trembling hands, I pushed it open and found a narrow, spiraling staircase that led to a secret chamber. The room was bathed in an eerie, blue light that seemed to pulse in time with my racing heart. In the center of the chamber stood a grand mirror, its surface cloudy and distorted by time. As I approached, the whispers swelled into a desperate chorus. "Remember, Emily. Remember." I stared into the mirror and for a fleeting second saw not my own reflection, but the anguished face of the diary's author, a woman who looked exactly like me. My breath caught in my throat as the image began to shift, merging my features with hers until I was staring at a single, tormented soul. In that shattering moment, memories surged back with brutal clarity. I recalled a night shrouded in smoke and flame, the searing heat, the piercing screams, and the overwhelming terror of being trapped. I remembered the suffocating terror of being unable to escape as the inferno consumed everything. The realization was unbearable. I had perished in that fire long ago, and this house had been my tomb ever since. Every inexplicable event, every whispered plea, was a fragment of the night I died, a night I had unconsciously tried to forget. The horrifying twist was undeniable. I was not a living tenant searching for a fresh start. I was the ghost of Emily, doomed to wander these silent halls, forever reliving the tragic moment of my demise. The diary wasn't just a record of another life. It was my own story, a history I had been too terrified to remember. Now, each night as the clock strikes midnight, the house awakens with the echoes of my lost soul, and the whispering intensifies, a constant reminder of the truth. I never left that burning night. I am both the haunted and the haunter, trapped in a cycle of sorrow and regret, a restless spirit bound to the very walls that witnessed my final fatal moments. And so, as I drift through these forsaken corridors, the ghostly reflection in every mirror serves as a chilling reminder of the inescapable horror. I was never truly alive to begin with. I never imagined moving into an old run-down apartment in the heart of the city would stir up nightmares I never knew I had. I thought it'd be a fresh start, a place to escape my past and get my life back on track. But from the moment I stepped over the creaky threshold of 13 Devon Street, something felt deeply off. Every floorboard groaned like it was whispering secrets, and shadows seemed to slither along the walls, playing tricks on my eyes. It all started on a rainy Tuesday night. I was unpacking in my new living room, the soft hum of the city muffled by the downpour outside, when I first heard it. A faint, almost apologetic whisper echoing from the long, narrow hallway. "Rachel, remember?" It murmured, so soft I nearly convinced myself it was just the wind. But as the night wore on, the voice grew bolder, echoing from corners I couldn't see. I told myself, it's just an old building settling. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Over the next few days, strange occurrences became my new normal. I'd catch a glimpse of a woman in a faded uniform in every reflective surface. A mirror here, a window there, and each time she vanished before I could really see her face. At first, I chalked it up to my tired eyes playing tricks after long, sleepless nights. But then came the inexplicable bruises on my arms and the gaps in my memory. I started waking up in odd places, disoriented, with no recollection of how I got there. One particularly gloomy afternoon, I was rummaging through the back of my closet when I found an envelope tucked away behind some old coats. Inside were yellowed newspaper clippings dating back over 20 years, recounting a series of unsolved disappearances and a violent tragedy that had once plagued this very building. Every article mentioned a mysterious figure, a ghost, some said, roaming the halls at night. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd seen her before, lurking in the peripheral vision of my every mirror. Determined to find answers, I started asking around the neighborhood. Neighbors, old and weary, spoke in hushed tones about the building's dark past and the souls that never left. They say she wanders here, always searching, one elderly man whispered as I passed him on the street. Searching for something, or someone, another added, eyes darting nervously as if the very mention might summon her. I couldn't help but feel that the name Rachel, my name, kept echoing in their voices, even if they never outright said it. Late one night, unable to sleep and tormented by the persistent whispering, I decided to explore the apartment. I followed the sound down a narrow corridor, flashlight trembling in my hand. The beam of light landed on a partially ajar door at the end of the hall, a door I didn't remember seeing before. My heart pounded as I pushed it open, revealing a hidden room cloaked in dust and decay. In the center of the room sat a tarnished, full-length mirror surrounded by a scattering of old furniture and a single leather-bound diary resting on a rickety table. I hesitated only a moment before reaching for the diary. The cover was cracked and worn, yet the handwriting inside was unmistakably familiar, my own. As I flipped through the pages, a chill crawled up my spine. The diary recounted vivid, horrifying details, brutal acts, cold calculations, and blood-stained confessions of unspeakable crimes. It described a massacre in the very building I now called home, with details that sent shivers down my already numb skin. There were entries about screams, pleading voices, and a relentless inner torment that consumed the writer. The entries were in first person, and each word seemed to drip with guilt and horror. The more I read, the more pieces of my fragmented memory started falling into place. I remembered flashes of darkness, of a night filled with chaos, of desperate cries, and a shadowed figure that felt all too real. The whispers that had tormented me began to make sense, their accusatory tone a constant reminder of something I'd been trying to forget. Every reflection in that mirror, every whispered, "Rachel, remember," was dredging up memories of unspeakable acts I could barely comprehend. I staggered back, the diary clutched tightly in my shaking hands, and stared into the mirror. In its murky surface, my own reflection stared back. But behind me, almost imperceptible, was the vague outline of a woman in a faded uniform. Her eyes were hollow, yet they bore an intense sorrow that seemed to plead for redemption. As lightning flashed through the dirty window, the image shifted, and for one terrifying moment, the two of us merged into one, a single face edged with agony, horror, and a dark secret that had haunted me for longer than I'd ever known. That's when the horrifying truth hit me like a freight train. The whispers weren't trying to tell me something external. They were the echoes of my own past. I wasn't just being haunted by a vengeful spirit. I was the spirit. I was the one who had unleashed unspeakable horror within these walls. I was the monster they'd been whispering about, the unwanted guest that had seeped into every crack and crevice of this forsaken place. My fragmented memories, the bruises, the missing hours, they were all symptoms of a truth I'd long denied. I had died in a blaze of violence and bloodshed in this very building. My soul, restless and tormented, had been condemned to wander these halls, forever reliving the atrocities I had committed. Now, Every creak of the floor, every flicker of a shadow in the mirror is a reminder of the faces of my victims and the evil I once embodied. The whispers aren't warnings from an external force. They're the mournful cries of those I hurt, echoing in a futile attempt to make me remember. And as I stand here in the decaying light of that hidden room, I realize with bone-chilling clarity that there's no escape from the past. I am both the haunted and the haunter, trapped in an endless loop of guilt and despair. So, if you ever find yourself drawn to an old building with creaking floors and whispered secrets, remember my story. Sometimes, the real horror isn't the ghost in the corner. It's the ghost within yourself, the part of you that never truly dies. And for me, Rachel, that ghost is a constant, unforgiving reminder that I was the monster all along. I've always been a little uneasy about dark places, but nothing prepared me for the night I moved into the old house on Millstone Road. The moment I stepped through the creaking front door, a chill that wasn't just from the autumn wind wrapped around me. I thought, great, another fixer-upper with a creepy vibe, and I laughed it off until the whispers began. At first, it was just a soft murmur when I was alone in the living room. I'd be scrolling through my phone on the sagging couch when I'd catch a sound like someone calling my name from the far end of the hall. It was subtle, almost casual, like a friend saying hey from another room. But as nights turned into endless cycles of uneasy sleep and restless wandering, I knew something was very, very wrong. I started noticing little things. A cold spot near the window, a shadow that lingered too long, and the constant feeling of being watched. I even caught a glimpse of a figure, a pale, sorrowful woman, reflected in the antique mirror in the hallway. At first I told myself it was just a flickering light, but soon it became clear that I wasn't just dealing with faulty wiring or an overactive imagination. One damn evening, while rummaging through some forgotten boxes in the attic, I found an old, dusty diary bound in cracked leather. The diary belonged to a woman named Eleanor, who had once called this house home. Her handwriting was neat, almost delicate, yet every word dripped with despair and secrets. Eleanor wrote about nights filled with whispers, of a presence that stalked her every step, and of a mysterious bond that tied her fate to the very walls of the house. What startled me most was her final entry. It ended with a single word: Claire. I had always known myself as Claire, so the discovery felt like a punch to the gut. Who was Eleanor, and why would she use my name? My nights became a jumbled mess of restless sleep and fevered dreams. I dreamed of endless corridors and of someone chasing me in the darkness. A figure with my eyes, my smile, and even the same scar I'd always hidden behind my hair. The line between my memories and Eleanor's words blurred in the dim glow of my bedside lamp. Determined to get answers, I spent days combing through every nook and cranny of the house. I uncovered faded photographs tucked behind an old wardrobe. In each picture, a beautiful young woman posed in various corners of the house. At first glance, she was Eleanor, but the more I looked, the more I saw the uncanny resemblance. The same determined look, the same haunted eyes, and that unmistakable scar along her cheek. It was as if I was staring at a ghost from a parallel life, a life that was inexplicably linked to mine. As the atmosphere in the house thickened, so did the terror. Every creak of the floorboard, every gust of wind slamming against the window seemed to murmur warnings. One particularly stormy night, when the rain hammered the roof and the wind howled like a living creature, I sat in the living room trying to make sense of it all. The shadows danced erratically on the walls, and for a split second, I thought I saw two figures standing side by side in the mirror. I spun around, heart pounding, but found the room empty except for my trembling self. Then came the night that shattered everything I thought I knew. I was lying awake in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, when I heard footsteps pacing slowly down the hallway. I mustered the courage to get up and follow the sound, each step heavy with dread. The corridor was pitch black, lit only by the intermittent flash of lightning through the narrow windows. I turned the corner and froze in horror. At the far end, under the feeble glow of a single lamp, stood a woman who looked exactly like me. Her eyes were hollow and desperate, and her face, though mirroring my own, carried a deep sadness I couldn't place. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible above the pounding of my heart. The figure didn't respond immediately. She simply extended a trembling hand toward me. In that frozen moment, memories that weren't mine began flooding my mind. I saw a raging fire consuming the house, screams echoing in the night, and a young woman, me, or was it her, fighting against something unseen, something inhuman. Back in the mirror, my reflection was no longer solitary. I saw two faces merging into one, my terrified expression intertwined with the sorrow of the ghostly woman. Panic surged through me as the room seemed to tilt, the lights flickering wildly as if trying to warn me. I turned, only to feel a cold, insistent hand grasp my shoulder. I whipped around, expecting to confront an intruder, but there was nothing. Just the oppressive darkness and the relentless pounding of my own heart. Then, in a voice that was both mine and not, a chilling whisper broke the silence. "You were never free, Claire. We are one, bound by blood and betrayal." In that final horrifying moment, the truth crashed down on me like a tidal wave. The whispers, the reflections, the memories, they were not separate fragments of a ghost story. They were me. I wasn't haunted by a spirit. I was the spirit. Eleanor had been me, a broken soul doomed to relive her tragic past over and over. The diary, the photos, even the ghostly figure in the mirror. They were all pieces of a puzzle that revealed my darkest secret. I had died in this house long ago, trapped in a cycle of torment and regret. Every night, I wandered these halls not as a living person, but as a restless ghost, doomed to repeat my mistakes in a loop of horror with no escape. Now, as I write this, I can still hear the soft murmur of my own voice echoing in the empty corridors. A reminder that the real terror isn't an external monster lurking in the dark. It's the relentless nightmare of realizing that sometimes the monster inside you is the one you can never escape. Every creak, every whisper, every flicker of shadow is a piece of my shattered past. A past that refuses to let me go. And as the clock ticks on, I remain bound to this house, forever haunted by the truth that I once sought to uncover, only to find that I was the ghost all along. I never imagined that moving into a creaky old house in a quiet town could turn my life into a waking nightmare. But after a messy breakup and feeling completely lost, I, Amanda, decided to take a chance on a fresh start at 27 Briarwood Lane, a place whispered about by locals for its eerie past and restless history. The moment I stepped onto the sagging porch, I could feel the weight of unseen eyes and hear the soft sighs of memories trapped in the walls. At first, I convinced myself that the constant groans of the old floors and the distant rustle of wind through broken windows were just part of the charm of a vintage home. I couldn't have been more wrong. It began on a damp autumn evening. As I settled into bed, the soft patter of rain against the window was interrupted by a faint murmur echoing through the dark hall. I swear I heard someone whisper my name. Amanda, please, help me. The voice was almost tender, yet it sent shivers straight down my spine. I tried to shake it off, blaming the sound on my overactive imagination, or perhaps the house settling in the chill night air. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The next morning, small but unsettling things started happening. I'd catch fleeting glimpses of a pale, sorrowful face in every reflective surface, an antique mirror in the hallway, a darkened window, even the glass of a broken picture frame. Sometimes, when I passed by, it seemed as if that ghostly visage moved behind me, vanishing as soon as I turned my head. I began finding odd objects scattered around. An old, tarnished locket with an inscription that read, "Remember." A faded photograph of a woman who bore an uncanny resemblance to me, and even a cracked mirror that I hadn't noticed before. Determined to uncover the truth, I dove into the local archives at the nearby library. I learned that the house once belonged to a woman named Evelyn, a reclusive figure who was rumored to have dabbled in occult rituals. According to old newspaper clippings and whispered legends among the townsfolk, Evelyn had vanished without a trace over 30 years ago. The more I read, the more the details unsettled me. Stories of unexplained disappearances, desperate notes scrawled on walls, and mentions of a restless spirit still roaming these halls. One particularly stormy night, when the wind howled like a beast outside, the unsettling events reached a fever pitch. I was curled up on the couch by the light of a single candle when I heard frantic tapping at the window. Heart pounding, I pulled aside the heavy drapes to see nothing but the relentless downpour and swirling fog. But as I turned back, my eyes caught sight of something chilling. A pair of eyes, wide with desperation, staring back at me from the glass. Just as quickly, they melted away, leaving me in stunned silence. That's when I noticed cryptic scribbles on the window pane, words that trembled with urgency. Remember me. Unable to bear the mystery any longer, I decided to confront the source of these hauntings head on. One cold night, with nothing but my flickering flashlight for company, I followed the echoing whispers down the long, narrow corridor to a hidden door at the end of the hall. With trembling hands, I pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading to the basement, a place that reeked of musty decay and forgotten secrets. Down in the dim, cluttered basement, surrounded by dusty relics and old furniture, I found a battered leather diary wedged behind a stack of broken boxes. The cover was cracked, the pages yellowed with age. I recognized the neat handwriting immediately. It was Evelyn's. As I flipped through the pages, my heart sank with each entry. Evelyn's words were raw, filled with anguish and regret. She wrote about her lonely existence, the haunting presence that tormented her, and her desperate attempts at rituals to break a curse that bound her to the house. One entry, scrawled in haste, read, "If I do not break the cycle, I will never know peace." The price of freedom is facing the truth we fear most. That sentence hit me hard. As I sat in the oppressive darkness of the basement, Evelyn's desperate plea mingled with the pounding of my heart. I began to remember fragments of my own past, flickers of a night filled with chaos, screams, and a searing heat that I couldn't quite place. Shadows of memory swirled in my mind, and the lines between Evelyn's torment and my own blurred until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Later that night, as I lay in bed trying to piece everything together, The familiar whisper returned, louder and more insistent. "Amanda, remember." I felt it, not just in the room, but inside my head, a haunting echo that wouldn't let go. I turned to the mirror across the room and froze. In the murky reflection, standing right behind me, was a translucent figure of a woman in a tattered dress, her eyes filled with an unending sorrow. I whipped around, heart racing, but the room was empty. Only the silence mocked me. In that terrifying moment, as my mind raced with half-remembered images and the oppressive weight of fear, the horrifying truth slowly emerged. I wasn't being haunted by an outsider. The spectral figure wasn't Evelyn at all. It was me. The blurry, desperate memories, the inexplicable feelings of dread, the ghostly appearances. They were all parts of a past I had long tried to bury. I began to recall flashes of a fire that had ravaged my old family home, the screams that were swallowed by the roaring flames, and a searing pain that I had never truly forgotten. With a gut-wrenching clarity, I realized the unthinkable. I had perished in that fire years ago. Every inexplicable event, every whispered plea, was a reminder that I had died that night. I wasn't the living person haunted by a malevolent force. I was the ghost, a lost soul, doomed to wander the silent halls of this house, forever trapped in an endless loop of regret and sorrow. The twist was as brutal as it was undeniable. In my desperate search for a fresh start and redemption, I had been chasing echoes of my own shattered past. The house wasn't cursed by a vengeful spirit. It was cursed by my own forgotten death. Now, every creak in the floor, every flicker of a shadow, and every whisper of the wind serves as a grim reminder of that night of terror. I'm not the one who came back to haunt the living. I'm the one who can't escape the ghostly prison of my own memories. And so, as I continue to wander these forsaken halls, each day blends into the next. A perpetual nightmare where I'm forced to confront the horror of my true self. The tragic irony is inescapable. I spent so long trying to outrun my past, only to discover that my past had never left me. I am both the victim and the monster, the haunted and the haunter. A ghost, forever bound to a house that holds the key to the unspeakable truth of my own demise. I never thought I'd be drawn to a place as eerie as 17 Ashwood Avenue, but after losing everything else, I figured a fresh start in an old, affordable house might be just what I needed. The moment I crossed the sagging porch and stepped inside, I felt like I was entering a world where time had long since forgotten warmth and laughter. The floors creaked under my weight, and every whisper of wind through the broken windows sounded like a forlorn sigh. At first, I chalked it up to my imagination. Maybe the chill was just the autumn air sneaking in through the gaps in the weathered walls. But on my first night, as I lay in bed listening to the steady patter of rain, I heard a soft murmur echo my name. Emily. It was almost comforting, like a lullaby, yet so wrong at the same time. I told myself it was nothing more than the house settling, but deep down, I knew that wasn't all there was. Days turned into weeks, and I began noticing unsettling details. I'd catch a glimpse of a pale face in the dusty mirror in the hallway. A face that looked strangely familiar. Whenever I passed by, it seemed to flicker in and out of view, leaving me with a gnawing feeling of dread. I found odd, almost forgotten objects tucked away in forgotten corners. A faded photograph of a smiling young woman with eyes that mirrored my own. A rusted locket engraved with the name Emily, and most disturbingly, an old diary bound in cracked leather. Late one rainy afternoon, Curiosity got the better of me. I settled in the dim light of the living room, diary in hand, and began to read the handwritten entries. The diary chronicled the life of a young woman who once called this house home. A woman who described eerie voices, unexplained bruises, and a relentless feeling of being watched. Every entry pulsed with anguish and regret. One page, scrawled hastily, read, "I am trapped here, haunted by the truth of who I really am. I wish someone could remember me." The more I read, the more my mind raced with questions. Was this diary just the ramblings of a tortured soul? Or was it somehow connected to me? I started having flashes of memories I couldn't explain, shadowy fragments of a life I'd never consciously lived. I recalled a night of blinding pain, a scream cut short, and a cold darkness that swallowed everything whole. It was like my mind was trying to whisper secrets from a past I had buried deep within. Late one evening, as a thunderstorm rattled the house, I decided to confront the mysteries head-on. Armed with a flashlight and a pounding heart, I ventured into the attic, a place that reeked of decay and lost memories. There, hidden beneath a moth-eaten quilt, I discovered a mirror so old its silver backing had flaked away, leaving only a murky reflection. I stared into it, half expecting to see nothing but my own tired eyes staring back. Instead, I saw a flicker of movement behind me, a shadow shifting, as if someone were standing just out of reach. When I turned around, the space behind me was empty, yet the mirror still pulsed with a strange energy, drawing me in. I reached out and brushed my fingertips against its cool surface. In that instant, my reflection began to change. The tired face I knew morphed into one that looked younger, more innocent, but equally terrified. And then, as the thunder boomed overhead, I heard it clearly, a voice, soft yet insistent, echoing from the mirror. "Remember, Emily. Remember." A rush of memories crashed over me, unbidden and unyielding. I remembered running through corridors, the sound of my own footsteps drowned out by frantic laughter and pleading cries. I remembered a fire, how it had raged through the house, how I'd been trapped in the inferno. My heart pounded as I pieced it together. The bruises, the lost hours, the incessant whispering. They weren't random. They were clues to a past I'd long tried to forget. As the realization sank in, the room spun. I staggered back, clutching the diary so tightly my knuckles turned white. In the mirror, the shifting reflection now showed not two, but three faces. A blurry montage of a terrified child, a desperate young woman, and the hollow, sorrowful eyes of someone who had seen too much. I sank to the floor, trembling as the truth hammered in. I had died in that fire, years ago, and every moment since had been a distorted echo of that final, horrific night. The voice from the mirror grew louder, more insistent, as if pleading for liberation. And then, with a gut-wrenching clarity, I understood. The hauntings, the flashes of memories, the ghostly apparitions, they were all fragments of my own soul, trapped in an endless loop of regret and terror. I wasn't being haunted by some external force. I was haunted by myself, a lost, broken spirit forced to relive the day I perished. In that final, heart-stopping moment, as the storm outside reached its crescendo, I realized the most terrifying truth of all. I had been searching for a way to escape my past, only to find that there was no escaping the part of me that had died that night. I was the ghost, forever bound to this decaying house, doomed to wander its dark corridors, haunted by the echoes of my own sorrow. And now, every creak in the floor, every whisper of wind, and every flicker of shadow is a reminder of the inescapable horror that I truly am. A lost soul trapped between life and death, condemned to an eternity of silent torment.